Hare Krishna. Dandat Pranam. Dandat Pranam to all devotees. Now we start today's Bhagavatam class. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrutam Naram Eva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tata Jayam नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्ति भवति नैष्टिकी. Hare Krishna. Dandat Pranam. Now today we continuing Srimad Bhagwatam, Canto 11, chapter 18, description of Varnashram Dharma, shloka number 21 to 30. Vivikta Kshemi Sharanaha Madhbhavo Vimala Ashaya Atmanam Chintet Ekam Avedena Maya Munihi Anvikshit Atmana Bandha Moksham Jnana Nishtaya Bandha Indriya Vikshepa Moksha Esham Cha Sanyamaha Tasmat Niyam Shatvargam Madbhavena Charit Munihi Virakta Shudra Kamebhya Labdva Atmani Sukam Mahat Purak Brahma Vrajan Sar Arthan Bhiksha Artham Pravishan Charit Punya Desha Sarchela Pana Ashrama Vatim Mahim. Vanaprastha Ashrama Padeshu Avikshnam Vaiksham Acharet Sansiddhya Te Asu Asammoha Shuddha Sattva Shila Andasa Na Etat Vastutaya Pashat Drishyamanam Vinashyati Asakta Chitta Viramadei Iha Virameta Iha Amutrak Chikirshitat Yat Etat Atmani Jagatmana Vak Prana Samvatam Sarvam Maya iti Tarkena Swastha Tektva Natat Smaret Jnana Nishta Virakta Vamad Bhakta Va Anapekshaka Salingan Ashraman Tektva Chareta Avidhi Gochara. Buddha Balakvat Krideta Kushala Jadavat Chareta Vadetun Mattavat Vidvana Gocharyam Na Egam Naigama Chareta Veda Vadarata Na Sat Na Pashandina Etuka Shushkavada Vivadena Kinchit Paksham Samashret. Translation and purport by the Srila Prabhupada. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Dwelling in a safe and solitary place is mind purified by constant thought of me. The sage should concentrate on the soul alone, realizing it to be non-different from me. By study knowledge, a sage should clearly ascertain the nature of the soul's bondage and liberation. Bondage occurs when the senses are deviated to sense gratification, and complete control of the senses constitute liberation. Therefore, completely controlling the five senses and the mind by Krishna consciousness, a sage, having experienced spiritual bliss within the self, should live detached from insignificant material sense gratification. The sage should travel in sanctified places by flowing rivers and within the solitude of mountains and forests. He should enter the cities, towns, and pasturing grounds and approach ordinary working men only to beg his bare sustenance. One in the Vanaprastha order of life should always practice taking charity from others, for one is thereby freed from illusion and quickly becomes perfect in spiritual life. Indeed, one who subsists on food grains and obtain in such a humble manner purifies his existence. One should never see as ultimate reality those material things which obviously will perish. With consciousness free from material attachment, one should retire from all activities meant for material progress in this life and the next. One should logically consider the universe which is situated within the Lord and one's own material body, which is composed of mind, speech, and light, air. to be ultimately products of the Lord's illusory energy. Thus situated in the self, one should give up one's faith in these things and should never again make them the object of one's meditation. Or learned transcendentalist dedicated to the cultivation of the of knowledge and thus detached from external objects, or my devotee who is detached even from desire for liberation. Both neglect those duties based on external rituals or paraphernalia. Thus, their conduct is beyond the range of rules and regulations. Although most wise, the Paramahamsa should enjoy life like a child, oblivious to honor and dishonor. Although most expert, he should behave like a stunted, incompetent person. And although most learned, he should speak like an insane person. And although a scholar learned in Vedic regulation, he should behave in an unrestricted manner. A devotee should never engage in the rituals mentioned in the Karma Kand section of the Vedas, nor should he become in opposition of Vedic injunctions. Similarly, he should never speak like a mere logician or skeptic or take any side whatsoever. He useless. Purport by the Srila Prabhupada, Jagat Guru, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. One who is engaged exclusively in the devotional service of the Lord in one of the five principal relationship is to be known as a pure Vaishnava because of his advanced stage of love of Godhead. A pure devotee is able to constantly chant the glories of the Lord without material hindrance. He is not interested in anything except Lord Krishna and never considers himself to be qualitatively different from the Lord. One who is still attracted by gross material body and subtle material mind, which cover the eternal soul, continues to see himself as different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This misconception is due to false identification with matter, with senses purified of material contamination. One must serve the Lord, who is the master of all senses, and thus one's devotional service is considered free from discrepancy. One who ignores the injunctions of Vedic literature uselessly wastes his sense activity in illusory material activities. One who is engaged, he falsely he falsely uh, consider himself to be different from Lord Krishna and therefore imagines that he possesses an interest independent of the Lord's interest. There is no possibility that such a person can achieve steadiness in life because the material field of action is constantly being shifted and transformed by the disturbing influence of time. If a devotee begins to cultivate an interest apart from the loving service of the Lord, his meditation on his oneness with the Lord will be disturbed and overturned. When the mind deviates from the lotus feet of the Lord, the duality of material nature again becomes prominent within the mind and one resumes a work program based on the three modes of material nature. One who is not fixed in one's own relationship with the Supreme Lord cannot be fearless or steady and is deprived of the shelter of Lord Sri Krishna. Therefore, one should seriously contemplate, as described in this verse, one's identity as a small particle of consciousness, not different from the supreme consciousness, Lord Krishna. Thus, one should remain steady in Krishna consciousness. Be careful, carefully understanding one's eternal nature, one will not again be bound up in the shackles of material energy. And by constant engagement in the service of the absolute truth, one is liberated. Then the flickering material senses can no longer drag one into the false consciousness of being a material enjoyer. Such steady sense control gives one relief from the harassment of material sense gratification. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the word Pura refers to cities and towns with shopping centers, markets, and other commercial enterprises, whereas Grama refers to smaller towns lacking such cities. The Vanaprastha or sannyasi trying to become free from material attachment should avoid those who are working day and night for sense gratification, approaching them only to engage them in necessary acts of charity. Those who are preaching Krishna consciousness all over the world are understood to be liberated souls, and therefore they constantly approach the materialistic living entities to engage them in the devotional service of the Lord. However, even such preachers should strictly avoid contact with the materialistic world when not actually necessary for advancing the mission of Krishna consciousness. The injunction is that one should not deal unnecessarily with the materialistic world. In the Western countries, people are generally so dull that they cannot distinguish between a saintly beggar and an ordinary hobo or hippie. A saintly beggar is constantly engaged in authorized devotional service to the Supreme Lord and accept only what he requires for his bare maintenance. The author of this book remembers entering the Krishna Consciousness Society as an arrogant university student and being quickly humbled by the process of begging on the street on behalf of Krishna. This process is not theoretical, but actually purifies one's existence by forcing one to offer respect to all others. Unless one offers respect to others, one's begging will be fruitless. Also, by begging, one will not often it very sumptuously. This is good because when the tongue is controlled, the other senses are quickly pacified. A Vanaprastha should never give up the purifying process of begging for his food, and ordinary people should not foolishly equate a lazy bum living at the cost of others with a saintly beggar engaged in higher duties for the Supreme Lord. One may doubt how a gentleman can retire from family life and live as a beggar eating meager foodstuffs. The Lord here responds by stating that sumptuous or palatable foods, along with all other material objects, such as the body itself, should never be seen as ultimate reality, since they are obviously perishable items. One should retire from material programs destined to enhance the quality of one's illusion, both in this life and the next. Every conditioned soul consider the material world to be the object of his personal sense gratification, and therefore considers the material body to be his actual identity. The word yaktva indicates that one must give up one's false identification with the material world and the material body, since both are merely products of the illusory potency of the Lord. One should never again meditate on the material world and body as objects of sense gratification, but rather should become situated in Krishna consciousness, looking at things from the eternal point of view. This word is simply illusory. The material energy of the Lord is devoid of consciousness and thus cannot be the basis of actual happiness. The Supreme Lord Himself is the only absolutely conscious entity. He is absolutely self sufficient, standing alone as Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. Only Vishnu and not the insignificant workings of material nature can give us the actual perfection of life. This verse describes the paramount stage of life in which there is no further need of rituals, external paraphernalia, or rules and regulation. A completely realized Jnana yogi pursuing liberation, or beyond that, a perfect duty of the Lord who does not desire even liberation, has no further desire for material engagement. When one completely purifies the mind, there is no possibility of sinful behavior. Rules and regulations are made for guiding those who have a tendency to act in ignorance or for personal gratification. But one who is perfect in spiritual consciousness can move freely, as described here by the Lord. One who tends to drive a car recklessly or who is unfamiliar with the local road conditions certainly needs the discipline of elaborate road signs and police enforcement of traffic laws. A perfectly safe driver, however, is thoroughly familiar with the local road condition. He has no real need for enforcement officials or the speed limits and caution signs meant for those unfamiliar with the road. A pure duty of the Lord desires nothing except service to the Lord. He automatically fulfills the purpose of all negative and positive injunctions, which is to always remember Krishna and never forget him. One should not, however, artificially imitate the exalted position of a Paramahansa devotee. For such imitation will quickly ruin one's spiritual career. In the previous verses, the Lord has elaborately described various ritual paraphernalia and disciplines for the various spiritual orders of life. The sannyasi, for example, carries a tridanda and a water pot and eats and lives in a particular way. A Paramahansa devotee, having completely given up all attachment and interest in the material world, is no longer attracted by such external features of renunciation. A Paramahansa sannyasi,
Should I read,
fearing that
Master? If you are tired, should I read?
That his mind may be deviated by the tremendous prestige that people sometimes offer to a perfectly self-realized person. Conceal his position as described in this verse. A self-realized person does not try to please the mass of people, nor does he desire social prestige, since the mission of his life is to remain detached from the material world and to always please the Supreme Personality of God. Although neglecting ordinary rules and regulation, a Paramahansa does not ever become sinful or immoral, but rather neglects ritualistic aspects of religious custom, such as dressing in a particular way, performing certain ceremonies, or executing specific penances and austerities of the pure devotees of the Lord, who have dedicated their lives to propagating the Lord's holy name, must very expertly present Krishna consciousness in a way pleasing to the mass of people so that they will accept it. Those who are preaching should try to make Lord Sri Krishna popular without trying to advance their personal prestige in the name of missionary progress. O Paramahansa, not engaged in distributing Krishna consciousness, however, should have no attachment whatsoever to public opinion. Next, although a Paramahansa devotee conceals his exalted position, certain activities are forbidden, even for one trying to conceal himself. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explained that in the name of concealment, one should not become a ghost. The word Ashanda refers to atheistic philosophies opposing the Vedas, such as Buddhism, and Haituk refers to those who accept only that which can be demonstrated by mundane logic or experimentation, since the whole purpose of the Vedas is to understand that which is beyond material experience. A skeptic, so-called logic, is irrelevant to spiritual progress. Srila Goswami warns us in this regard that a devotee should not read atheistic literature, even with the purpose of refining arguments against atheism. Such literature should be entirely avoided. The above mentioned prohibited activities are so detrimental to the advancement of Krishna consciousness, that they should not be adopted even as a superficial show. Thus end the purpose of prayer. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Ena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vande Am Sri Guru Sri Yuttapada Kamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavancha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam tam sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitancha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi पाश्चात देशतारिणे वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण दंडवत प्रणाम। We continuing 18th chapter, description of the word Varnashram Dharma. Prabhuji will tell you in detail. Hare Krishna Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Mataji. In fact, there's so much to talk on this topic, but the essence of all the talks, as Krishna says, is that we have to avoid the prohibited activities which are detrimental to the advancement of Krishna consciousness. And nothing should be adopted as a superficial show. So that is what is most important. And Krishna says that when the mind deviates from the lotus feet of Krishna, the duality of material nature becomes prominent within the mind. And we start working based on the three modes of material nature. Hence, it is important to always be concentrating on the lotus feet of Krishna. If you are not fixed in our relationship with Lord, we cannot be fearless hostage. And we are deprived of the shelter of Lord Krishna. Jivera Swarupa Hoya Nittera Krishna Das. This is our real identity. Therefore, we should seriously contemplate, as mentioned in the verses which you have studied, identify as a small particle of consciousness, not different from the supreme consciousness, which is Lord Shri Krishna. And then we'll be in a position to remain steady in Krishna consciousness. And if we ignore these injunctions of Vedic literature as uselessly, then actually uselessly we are wasting our sense activity in illusory material actions. We'll consider ourselves different from Krishna. Imagine that we have interest independent of Lord Krishna, but that is not possible. We are dependent. We cannot be independent. So all those who say that there will be progress, there will be Viksit Bharat, there will be such and such things, they are all false promises and assurances, because real happiness lies in our identification with Krishna, surrenderance to Krishna, and going back home to Vaikuntha, where there is no anxiety. Vaikuntha. So that is the real identification. And that is what is getting emphasized in these shlokas, and especially the 21st number shloka of this 18th chapter of the 11th canto. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyacha kripa sindhubhayavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.